Anthony Richardson has taken all of the first team snaps with the Indianapolis Colts in the last two practices. Is Richardson on track to be quarterback one in week one? And what's the latest at running back with Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss still out? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here by my fellow writer, co-host, and analyst at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, it's Thursday night. The Hall of Fame game is tonight, so I'm rocking a little Hall of Fame Peyton Manning shirt here to represent PFM and his illustrious career. And after this show, I'm going to watch some preseason football tonight. There's not going to be very many known players playing, but hey, football is back, baby. How you doing, Drake? How's your week been?
It's been a really good week, and I'm excited for more Colts camp on Sunday. I'm excited to, like you said, just see football because I think I had this conversation with someone else, but there's just no off season quite like the NFL. Fans that are NFL nerds over every other sport out there have to wait. I think it's over in February, so you've got March, April, May, June, July, August, September. That's 7 months to wait for actual football, like regular season football. So much waiting. I'm excited just to see some snaps happen on an NFL field. Let's go.
Exactly. I think the chat is as well. Beverly Twin Life is here. How you doing, Colts Nation? We're doing pretty great, Beverly. Thank you for joining us. Bradley is here as well. So ready for the first preseason action. You'll be seeing that tonight with the Browns, and you'll be seeing it next Saturday with the Indianapolis Colts. And we won't talk about it tonight, but Drake and I have a little announcement about these preseason games that we'll get to next week. So make sure you tune in on Monday night. We'll be announcing what that is. Matthew is here as well. What up to you? He's ready for football to be back. Stats Matt, the third host, is joining us. Gonna have to hurry it up. We've got football tonight. We'll be sure to be finished by 8 p.m. Eastern, so that way everybody can tune in to the game. Keon is already asking, will Jonathan Taylor be playing for the Colts this season? Hey man, your guess is as good as ours at this point. But we'll see. We hope he is. We hope there's a resolution, but I don't think it's coming anytime soon. The GOAT Logan Schmidt is here. Thank you for joining us. And Joe Camacho, the legend himself. Good to see you, Joe. We're waiting on Patrick, the COO, CFO of Horseshoe Huddle, to join us tonight. So while we get ready here, if you haven't done so already, please go follow us on all the things like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at ColtsOnFN and subscribe to Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I are going live, whenever Shad goes live with the Saddle Up show, because as you guys have already seen, preseason is here, training camp is here. We're throwing out tons of content, lots of episodes here. So you're going to want to make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell so you never miss us. And if you can't catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to your podcast, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on there. And you can catch every episode of the Horseshoe Halftime as well. Drake and I have been doing some audio-only episodes. Stats Matt wants to be the CIO for Horseshoe Huddle. The job's all yours. Stats Matt, you can be the CIO as long as you don't miss any more episodes, buddy. No more taking off for
softball, dude. Come on,
softball fishing tournaments. What's up with this guy?
Kids,
and if you guys haven't seen on Twitter, Horseshoe Huddle's having an event next Sunday at I think it's at, let me see here, Grand Junction Brewing Company, the brewery in Westfield, Indiana, at 5:30 p.m. So we're all going to be there down there for camp on Sunday after practice. If you guys want to hang out, drink a beer with us, talk some Colts football, just have a really good time. Myself, Drake, Jake Arthur, Zach Hicks, all four of us are going to be at Grand Junction Brewing Company starting at 5:30. So make sure you come, have a beer, and just have a good time with us there. So Logan Schmidt wants to be the security guard. Hey, there you go, buddy. You got yourself a job as well.
Done.
Shout out to DSG Good Bar as well, and Noah Compton. And as we're talking tonight, guys, if you want your comments to be featured or you want a shout out, throw in that super chat. Drake and I will get to it ASAP like we always do. But I've done enough yapping, Drake. Let's dive in to what really matters, and that's Colts football. And of course, it wouldn't be right to start an episode without talking about the quarterback himself, Anthony Richardson. Is he going to be quarterback one? Like I mentioned earlier to kick off the show, Anthony Richardson has taken all of the first team reps over the last two practices. He did miss Monday's practice because of that little procedure he had done. The nasal procedure to fix his septum. Everything's all good there. He was back to practice the very next day, but I know the Colts have been rotating Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson, but man, it seems like the farther we go, the more first team reps Anthony Richardson is getting, and the faster or the more we're starting to think that Richardson might be starting week one. What do you think, Drake?
I think that it's been a telltale sign that they're trying to slowly ramp him up to speed. And look, this isn't even bias. This is just truth. You can tell Steichen knows what he's doing. I mean, you can legitimately feel when you watch this guy, the calm, the ridiculous like mentorship that he's able to give to Anthony Richardson. By the way, a quarterback who may need that more than anyone else just because of the lack of experience. And the experience he does have as a starting quarterback is with a really bad team. There's no offense to the Florida Gators in 2022, but they weren't good. And so he's got real players around him now, guys who can go up and make catches, get open. You know, Jonathan Taylor's still pending here, but if he plays, you've got literally, like I always like to tell everyone about him, lightning in a bottle right behind you to hand the ball to. So Steichen has just been so patient with Richardson, and he's been able to slowly ramp him up to more starting reps as practice has gone along. I personally think as we continue to watch these practices, and especially on Sunday and the next Thursday when we go, Andrew, I think you're just going to continue to see more and more Anthony Richardson, and he's going to look a little bit more polished. Of course, he's going to look bad at times. He's a rookie, but you got to really be excited if you're a Colts fan to see him out there with the starting reps that much already in camp.
Right. And we what this is what we've kind of been talking about all off season, Drake, is when we said it's really not the physical. The physical, he's there. I mean, hell, he was talking this week that just naturally he's gone in the past few months from 240 to around 250 pounds. And we've seen that boy up close. It ain't fat. That's muscle that boy is packing on there at just the ripe age of 21 years old. But it's not the physical, it's the mental. That's the stuff that Anthony Richardson really needs to get down. And what we've heard from Shane Steichen, from Gardner Minshew, from Michael Pittman, from Quentin Nelson, even Richardson himself, is he feels like it's all starting to come together. All that studying, all of that hard work that he has done, diving into the playbook and continuing to ask questions, trying to get those mental reps whenever he's able to. It's the mental stuff is coming and coming quickly. I mean, I mentioned this in my rookie files piece. Again, this kid is Anthony Richardson is very, very bright. I mean, he had a great GPA all throughout his time at Florida. Throughout high school, he had very, very good grades, was taking honors classes. So Anthony Richardson is a bright kid. He's gonna get this stuff down quickly, and that's been apparent. So it was on that mental side, and as long as that keeps progressing as it has been, I'm feeling more and more confident that Anthony Richardson starts week one against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And as you said as well, there's going to be some ups and downs over the past couple days at practice. While he's been taking these first team reps, he's had some really good moments, and he's had some not so good of moments. He's thrown 2 interceptions in this time. There's been some inaccuracy issues, but then you also see the athleticism and the type of throws that only Anthony Richardson can make. And today you start seeing him, as Jake Arthur was telling us, he was live there at Colts camp. Towards about the later half of practice, he was becoming far more consistent, far more accurate with his throws, really settling into those padded practices, which is a good sign.
And we've been talking about it. You need to get a guy like this reps, and it's a unique situation. Everyone has been saying, well, Mahomes sat a year, Rodgers sat. completely different circumstances. Also, they had far more experience playing football at quarterback on a quote unquote high level that is college football. So they could kind of sit behind somebody and not really need to get those reps to continue to get experience. They already had it. Richardson doesn't have the experience, but also he's so raw that you want to continue to get him rolling. You don't want him to stop, halt, and wait and watch. That's the last thing that they want, and that they want to happen. And regardless of what people think, they've got him on track right now to currently start. In my opinion, I think that this has been the game plan all along. I think it's one of the biggest reasons, if not the reason, they brought Gardner Minshew, because he knows the offense and he can help Richardson understand it really well. Because I mean, this is a guy that's going to have at least, I believe it's 4 years. His rookie contract was 4 years. Correct?
It's 4 years and a fifth-year option by
Okay,
the team.
so yeah, so even if hopefully, he's there long term, but of course he's going to be with Steichen the whole step of the way. Every single time that he's out there, every new year, he's going to be with Steichen. So it's been the plan all along to get him out there week one, and so far they've done, in my opinion, a very nice job of doing that.
And those live reps are really what matters at this point, especially with these past 2 days. They've also been the only 2 days that the Colts have had full pads on in these practices. And in practice, when full pads are on, everything speeds up because the players can go out there and hit. The intensity ratchets up. So you need to have your timing down with your receivers, and that's where Richardson has kind of struggled a little bit. And he spoke to this on Tuesday after practice, talking about just the intensity when the pads are on and his timing. And this is what he had to say.
It's definitely different. Different from every level. You're playing against the best of the best. Regardless of what group you're going with, everybody's out there working. So it's just a matter of getting the momentum down pat. Staying locked in mentally. You're going to have ups and downs, but it's just a matter of, keeping your head cool, calm and collected, and just making plays.
What is it about the timing of the NFL that maybe, I won't say it's the hardest part, but one of the harder parts to kind of grasp when you're going?
It's really the details. The details make up for all the timing. The guys taking, 8 steps instead of 10 steps on a route, and, footwork being in place, being in line. So the details really matter, and that what makes up the timing. And the timing is definitely a big aspect of it, so you got to be on point.
So when he's talking about that timing aspect of it, I just really love how he mentions the details, because at such a young age, and as a rookie quarterback in the NFL, a lot of them don't really get that, and it's really good to see. Again, just shows the head that Anthony Richardson has on his shoulders, and how he's really focused and lasered in, taking in the coaching, looking at those little details that are going to be the difference between a completion or an interception in the NFL. And I'm really encouraged by how he's been really just approaching this entire situation, and how he's approaching just being a rookie and trying to fast track himself into the starting role with the Colts.
Well, and there's also been a very nice transition mentally for him to just kind of admit, hey, no, when I was in college, I threw based off of my arm strength. I didn't really care about footwork. He didn't need it because the competition wasn't at this level that he's, facing now. So he knows his limitations. He also knows where he can go. I think that, I mean, obviously he hasn't said this in answering a question or anything, but he understands his ceiling, and he understands it in this offense with Shane Steichen. And like you said, I love the fact that you mentioned he's incredibly intelligent. He is a sponge. This is a guy that's going to take in everything that he's being told by experts like Jim Bob Cooter and like Cam Turner, guys that know what they're talking about. So we said this before, Andrew. It's the mental, and it was all dependent on how much he absorbed and applied. And so far, it looks like he's heading in the right direction, especially the way he's answering those questions.
And you're right in that this is like a lot different than Florida. Even he mentioned it, going up against the second and third team. These are all professional football players. So just the fact that when you're going up against those types of players, when a player is considered open in the NFL, the window is a hell of a lot smaller than what a player would be considered open in college, and that's something that he's had to adjust to as well. And he spoke on that on Tuesday.
When it comes to guys being open, it's a tough league. The windows are definitely a lot smaller, but it's just a matter of knowing when to throw it and when not to, not forcing it because, if it's first or second down in the red zone, the goal line, then you got a chance for the next play instead of trying to force it and be Superman and make something work when, there's really nothing there. So it's just a matter of being smart and just learning from Gardner and Sam and just understanding when to give guys the ball and when I can't give it to them.
It sounds more mature beyond his years, not trying to force everything in the red zone, because in these red zone sessions that the Colts have been having, he has taken it and just thrown it out of bounds at times when they're going through first and second down, not trying to force it if it's not there. A lot of times you see a rookie quarterback, they'll panic and try to just, especially with a big armed guy like Anthony Richardson, he'll just say, oh, well, my arm can take care of it. And he'll try to fire it in there. And then a lot of times, because of the speed of these athletes, you're going to get burned. So it's, again, that maturity is really showing through with Anthony Richardson as far as what he can and can't do as an NFL quarterback.
And I love that you said that too, because the way that he elaborated and kind of went into detail on, look, if it's first down and I know we still have second down, I don't want to say, okay, I think I can throw this and just force it in there, because that is, like you said, it's already putting him in year 3 mentally, like year 4 mentally. That's what guys who are starting to get their career rolling start thinking. So it's the guys who kind of hit the ground running, like your Justin Herberts, that understand in year 1, like, look, I can't force this in. This is not college anymore. This is not, a team that I might have to lift on my, put on my shoulders and take them to the promised land. It's a team where they're going to help him. It's a coaching staff where they're going to help him. He's not absent of a quarterback coach this time. He's got everybody there. And again, he understands this too. The entire team is tailored right now to him. And that's the whole plan. And like you said, him getting those first team reps already, that's just putting him on the track to start week 1 and start getting those live reps that he so desperately is going to need.
All right, Drake, if you had to put money on it, is Anthony Richardson going to be QB1 in week 1?
I initially was thinking to myself, he's probably going to start week 4 or 5, not that I wasn't confident in him, but he just needs to learn so much. But clearly he has learned at a faster pace than I expected. The Colts are starting to slowly put him in there more and more. And I fully expect him at this point to just continue to be right here and get more and more reps. I think that they want him to start week 1. I think that right now they think he's on track. And as long as nothing goes crazy or he doesn't have a drop in mentality last second or something, I think he's out there week 1, man.
I'm leaning that way too, and we were both in the same boat. That give him about a month, and then they'll probably have Anthony Richardson there. The way things are going, would not shock me if Anthony Richardson is starting week 1 for the Colts, especially if this continues with him taking the majority of the first team reps all throughout training camp and the preseason. It's all about that mental work. If he can handle everything mentally, the Colts are going to put him out there and try to get him as many reps as possible, so that way he can learn during those live games. And so far, so good. It hasn't been too big for him. Quentin Nelson and Michael Pittman have both said how he's had such a tremendous command of the huddle. And with him speaking like he is, and the demeanor that he has had through these practices, obviously we're going to see more in the preseason games, and that'll truly test whether he is ready or not. But the way things are going, I would probably lean towards yes, Anthony Richardson will be the starting quarterback week 1 for the Indianapolis Colts. So as we move on from Anthony Richardson, the other big topic of discussion with the Colts right now, of course, is the running back situation, especially with number 28 still on the sideline, still on the PUP list. That trade request is still out there. The Colts and Jonathan Taylor have not come any closer on anything. So as of right now, he's still disgruntled. His ankle is still hurt. He still has the same look on his face every time we see him publicly. So at this point, we've got to look at who else is out there. Zach Moss obviously broke his arm on Monday. We talked about that. So it kind of moves to the next man up here for the running back situation. And really that goes to Evan Hall, the rookie out of Northwestern, and Deion Jackson, who's been with this team for a couple years now. And really what we've seen over the past couple of days is Deion Jackson has been the primary starting back in these practices, running with the first team offense, and Evan Hall has come in spurts with the first team and getting a lot of run in some of the passing situations. So Drake, it's really if the Colts don't sign another running back, which they might. I mean, Mike Chappell thinks they certainly will, but at this point, Deion Jackson and Evan Hall are running back 1 and running back 2 with Taylor and Moss out.
Look, the Colts love two things. They like their draft picks and they like building in-house, and they like keeping guys in-house. I mean, look at what they've done with Jordan Wilkins. You know, I know he's not on he's not like one of the guys now, but I mean, they really value the guys that have been building up in the organization. And so them bringing in guys like they did today, I feel like they're kind of saying, holy cow, we trust Evan Hall and we really like Deion Jackson, and we feel like Xavier Scott has serious upside, more than what we were expecting. But these guys are a rookie, a third-year player with limited experience still, and a rookie. I mean, we're talking about a really kind of like the cornerback room almost. It's pretty thin and it's very inexperienced. And so the whole, just to really quick elaborate on the progress with JT, that I think somebody asked like if it's negatively affecting Anthony Richardson. We actually covered that, I think, in like a previous episode. I think it was Taryn. We at this point, me and Andrew think like, you know, it's probably that it's understood at this point. I think Anthony Richardson probably, I mean, the way that he's talking in those interviews and the questions he's answering, he's very mature. So I think that he's probably understanding what's going on. But yeah, I mean, with Jonathan Taylor, it's definitely a different backfield. But I think that Evan Hall has looked great, Andrew. I really do. I think he's had one of the, and we'll talk about another guy who's had a big camp that no one was expecting, but people were excited about Hall. They were like, this guy's a one-cut monster that he can leave people in the dust, and he's 210 pounds. He's a receiving specialist, but he has really outplayed that 5th-round designation, in my opinion. I think he's looked more like a 3rd-round guy, and he's starting to mesh with this offense. I think Deion Jackson, though, is probably going to have the edge because he's also versatile and he knows the offense, or he knows the team a little bit more, the organization. He knows the league better. But that's definitely something to look out for. But don't sleep on Xavier Scott either. That dude's right in the hunt with those two others right there that are kind of leading the depth chart right now.
Yeah, Taryn's question is really what we talked about for our Horseshoe Huddle halftime episode that came out yesterday. So Taryn, go check that out for our full comments. But yeah, I agree. And this the Colts have faith in their young running backs. I don't think that's why they're panicking that much. Evan Hall was a guy that I loved watching early on in this draft cycle. I thought he fit that receiving back role perfectly for a Shane Steichen offense. And I was lucky the Colts took him in the 5th round. But it seems Hall and Jackson are both impressing the Colts coaches during this time when Taylor and Moss aren't on the field. And talking with Colts offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter, I asked him a question on I think it was Wednesday. Yeah, it was yesterday. Asked him a question yesterday in his media availability just about Evan Hall and Deion Jackson and the progress that he has seen from these two. And this is what he had to say.
Both guys have had a strong start to camp. Evan Hall, obviously, rookie coming in. First NFL experience in the off season, and then you get sort of that summer, you get sort of that 4 to 5 week period, to get away a little bit, but also to work on yourself, to work on your game a little bit, to work on your body a little bit. And he's come back. His footwork's crisp. He's running good routes. He's making good cuts in the run game. He's really developing. Like I said, really good start to training camp, and then. Deion Jackson also has had a strong start, man. He's had a few nice runs. There's been some well-blocked runs that he has really hit and really, just running the ball hard, running the ball well, showing some good things in the pass game. Both those guys are really doing well for themselves this first week or two at camp, and hopefully that keeps coming with a bunch of our guys on offense. But both those guys are doing a really nice job coming along.
So good news out of Colts camp. And when you're talking about Evan Hall just continuing to progress, that home run ability that Deion Jackson has, Jim Bob Cooter seems impressed. And it doesn't seem like the Colts are going to panic, but obviously you'd like them to bring in probably a little bit more depth while this situation's going on, and at least until Zach Moss can return.
Yeah, and even if you're being, a little bit more close to the chest with your draft picks and want them to develop properly, bring in a veteran, have them learn. Okay. Like, don't get me wrong, Zach Moss is still going to be there, but you want a guy who's actually out there also potentially playing with you. So I can understand why they're doing this whole thing with bringing in free agents and undrafted free agents. But my favorite word out of that was crisp. Oh, I love that word. I love the way that he was like, his footwork is crisp. I mean, this is a guy that I was super geeked when they drafted him, because he is a bigger receiving back. I mean, this is a guy who still runs downhill. I mean, he runs with force. He is a running back that is really good at receiving. He's not a receiving back, in my opinion. Evan Hull is a running back that is very, very good at receiving. But don't sleep on Deion Jackson either. He's looked really good in training camp, and he's been with the team for longer than these guys have. And I think that this is kind of him thinking, this is my time to prove, with JT out, all due respect, this is my time to prove that I am worth a higher spot on this team and in this backfield.
And the Colts are doing their due diligence at the running back position. They signed a guy that maybe people in Indianapolis might know of already, a running back, Toriano Clinton from the University of Indianapolis, the all-time leading rusher for U of Indy. Obviously, I don't know if it's going to make a major impact, but at least it's some depth in camp.
Well, and also the guy was, I know that it's not your, Division I type of talent, but he's an all-time leader at a college in rushing yards. He's 7.7 per carry average, 52 total touchdowns, 4,538 rushing yards. I mean, he dominated. And every time we've talked about these guys that are from these smaller schools, Andrew, what do we say? They need to look like they don't belong. Okay, you said that, and that's one of the best things I've ever heard when it comes to like analysis for scouting. They need to look like they don't belong if they're at one of those smaller schools like Titus Leo did at Wagner and whatnot. Well, this is exactly the case with him. So I like that they took a local kid. I like that they're giving him a shot, and you never know when someone's going to hit. We'll talk about someone else who they didn't think was going to hit, and they're hitting now. So you just never know.
Yeah, and the Colts are still doing, like I said, they're doing their due diligence, not just with Clinton, but they did work out 3 other running backs this week, according to ESPN's Field Yates, former Baltimore Raven Kenyon Drake, former Pittsburgh Steeler Benny Snell, and then this is on me, I didn't do my research, but Devin Ozigbo, they also worked out him as well. So 3 veteran running backs that the Colts worked out this week. Of those 3, Drake, who would you want to see the Colts sign, or who would you be the most comfortable joining the Colts?
I would honestly be most comfortable with the most recognized name, and that's Kenyon Drake. He's got over 4,000 career rushing yards. He's been on some good offenses, and he's had some prevalent roles, in his career already. So I think that he's going to be the best guy to sign. Plus, he receives better than the other 2. So, I mean, and Ozigbo is kind of interesting because he barely has any rushing statistics. He's got more receiving, but that just tells me that maybe he's more of a special teamer. Right now, you've got the special teams down. Okay, you're good. You need to get a veteran running back in here right now, at least until Zach Moss is healthy, and see what he can do. Give him a shot. They're out there for a reason. They're out on the market.
Yeah, if you're looking for more of a guy that could be like a 3-down back for you, I'd probably go with Kenyon Drake. If you're looking for a guy that's like a bruiser downhill, more of a depth piece, then probably Benny Snell.
Yeah.
We'll see if the Colts do sign any of these guys, because they're all still on the market. We could see a signing within the next couple days. It is very possible. But Drake, when looking at this running back group as a whole, are you confident or are you concerned with this group? Do you think the Colts have enough at running back right now with Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss currently out, or do you think another piece needs to be added right now?
Well, to the people out there that want to answer this question, I'll pose something first. You have currently, I think, probably Deion Jackson leads the depth chart.
Yes, he does.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, Evan Hall, I love him. He does not lead the depth chart right now. It's Deion Jackson, Evan Hall, probably Xavier Scott. Then you've probably got Jake Funk. I'm not comfortable with that. Like
Mhm.
it just doesn't say. Especially, it'd be different if it was a veteran. If it was strictly Gardner Minshew, they hadn't drafted Anthony Richardson. He'd probably work with that. I mean, he worked with a lot less in Jacksonville and did okay at times. So it's Anthony Richardson though, and it's looking like he's going to start week 1, and he needs more reps in training camp. So I'm a little bit worried. Scott and Hall and Jackson are just still so inexperienced. 2 of them are rookies. Now, don't get me wrong. The guys above, they're veterans in their own rights, but they're not really big solutions.
Mhm.
The running back room's been plagued by drama and unfortunate circumstances. So you got to get somebody in there with what they've been dealt. Though the Colts are doing what they can. You got to give them that at least.
Right. In my opinion, I think I'd definitely be concerned because am I concerned with Deion Jackson and Evan Hall? No, I think they can handle it. But it's that depth aspect, the Xavier Scotts, the Jake Funks. So if it were me, I was the GM, you go out, you sign Kenyon Drake, you bring him in here in camp, get him used to the playbook. If Zach Moss can return for week 1, fantastic, great. If Jonathan Taylor is back and ready for week 1, you can easily cut ties with whoever you bring in. But at this point, if you're relying on Xavier Scott and Jake Funk to be that back end of the running back depth chart, I'm concerned with that. You need to bring somebody else in to help out your rookie quarterback while this whole fiasco settles down and Zach Moss can get healthy, Jonathan Taylor can get healthy and back out there. I think a running back should be signed, and I'd be all in if Kenyon Drake came to the Indianapolis Colts. But that's not all. I mean, we're talking about quarterbacks, we're talking about running backs. There are other Colts on the field doing their thing, Drake. So let's wrap some things up as far as over the past couple days at Colts camp here. Just some observations that we've had, and one of them, Michael Pittman Jr. This kid looks focused. He is definitely taking a different approach to his contract situation than Jonathan Taylor is. Whenever the media or whenever we ask Michael Pittman about it, he says, "That's not on my mind. My agent is handling all that. I'm just here to play football." And I mean, I wish Jonathan Taylor was taking that stance, but hey, you've got to do your own thing. It is what it is. But Pittman out there, you're starting to see that chemistry with Anthony Richardson. Richardson has been throwing the ball more in these full team periods. We saw on Tuesday a real nice 30-yard crosser from Anthony Richardson right into Pittman's chest for a big gain. These two are starting to really start to connect, which could be scary if these two really start hitting. Michael Pittman could be on pace for a really good year. And before I let you give your analysis on that, Drake, we do have a super chat here from DSG Goodbar. $5 super chat. Really appreciate it, buddy. Thank you so much for all of your support. He says, "Hey guys, was Amari Rogers signed as a vet to help Anthony Richardson with the bubble screen short passing game? Also, your thoughts on cornerback Darrell Baker Jr. Love your work." So we're going to talk about Darrell Baker Jr.
We'll get to him
literally here in a couple minutes. But Amari Rogers, Drake, the Colts signed him yesterday, former Packers and Texans wide receiver. I was a big fan of his coming out of the draft in 2021. Thought he'd be a real nice pickup for the Colts. He has some kick return, punt return experience, has had some fumbles in the past, but an intriguing wide receiver signing, to say the least.
Yeah, and he continues. I actually wrote this in the breaking news piece that I put out, is that he continues to be in the trend of that shorter wide receiver that you just didn't see before Shane Steichen made a pit stop in Indy. So he's also 215 pounds at 5'9". That's a lot. So great returning experience. He's done punt returns, kick returns for 2 different franchises. He understands success there in Green Bay. I think that he could be a very intriguing add to a Shane Steichen offense, given the way that he's built, and kind of like you said, DSG, is the way that he could potentially, like Downs and McKenzie, help Richardson in that short passing game out of the slot.
Right. And I think it's going to be an uphill battle for Rodgers to make the final squad. I think he's going to have to
It's gonna be
really
tough.
is going to have to really impress in these preseason games and outshine Mike Strawn for that wide receiver 6, which, by the way, Mike Strawn, again, here in the preseason or in training
Always.
camp, I mean, he's making plays. But yeah, Amari Rodgers is really going to have to shine to kind of displace Mike Strawn as that wide receiver 6, but we'll see. Again, DSG Goodbar, really appreciate the super chat and all of your support. So back to MPJ. Drake, what do you think about the wide receiver 1 for the Colts and what he's shown so far in camp?
I mean, he's shown at this point that he can do everything. He can be the downfield guy. He can be the intermediate guy. He can be the short yardage guy. And he can play with any type of quarterback. Now he's got consistency with the guy who is going to be able, with his athleticism, to open up opportunities for MPJ himself. So I love the fact that the chemistry is being established early. That is exactly what you were hoping for, but you weren't too sure about because we were all thinking maybe Pierce is going to stick out, which he has. And that's what makes this all more intriguing is that MPJ has as well, almost as much as Pierce, if not more. So it's just you're hearing you're hearing one thing at the end of the day, that Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce are meshing with Anthony Richardson. That's the 1 and the 2. One is the downfield guy. One's the number 1 receiver on the team. Whether you want to call him a league-wide WR1 or not, he's looking like one, and he's going to be one for Anthony Richardson. So you have to love that that's getting established right here, right now.
I'm so excited to see Michael Pittman Jr. in that A.J. Brown X wide receiver type role in Shane Steichen's offense. I think it could be really good for his career. And if the Colts want to hold off on extension talks with Michael Pittman and he ends up taking off, I hope the Colts are going to be okay with dishing out quite a few more millions of dollars in order to keep Michael Pittman Jr. on this team. Just be prepared for that.
Oh, yeah.
Want to give a shout out to Josh Fancher here for the $1 super chat. And he says give a shout out to my man Logan. And he's probably jacked. Logan Schmidt. We always give Logan a shout out because Logan's the GOAT. Great friend of the show, great person, and just a lot of fun. So Logan, from Josh, you're a GOAT. So
yeah, the GOAT, man.
Logan says, who, me? Yeah, you, buddy. But Drake, Michael Pittman hasn't been the only wide receiver making plays. Josh Downs, you're starting to see it. You're starting to see Josh Downs come along, making some acrobatic one-handed catches, making some diving catches, juking out some of the Colts cornerbacks and getting free. This is exactly what we expected from Josh Downs, and he's really showing off. Shout out to my my wife for the super chat as well, the nightly super chat. Thank you so much, Danny. As she says, your dinner is ready, guys. You're keeping me away from the Chinese food, but we're going to talk about some Colts.
Don't
football.
rush him. We got stuff to talk about. God.
Yeah, we still got a little bit left here in this show, but Drake, I don't know about you, but Josh Downs starting to impress me and starting to make it harder for these coaches for that wide receiver 3 battle between him and Isaiah McKenzie.
Yeah, we were talking about McKenzie's going to have the clear edge, probably going to start week 1. You know, I was also thinking maybe Richardson starts week 4 or 5. I'm starting to think he's going to start week 1, and I'm starting to think that based off of the freaking plays that Josh Downs is making, he's going to have a claim for that week 1 wide receiver 3 spot. And we've been saying it all year already, like ever since the season ended, and especially since the draft, that this guy is shorter, but his route running is ridiculous. He's able to be physical with bigger defensive backs, and above all else, his receiving range is ridiculous for such a short guy. He just if his hands touch the ball, it seems like he pulls it in one way or another. So the fact he's doing that already, it just gets you so excited for what he could potentially do with a guy he's already establishing rapport with, like Anthony Richardson.
And the thing is, Josh Downs, his arms aren't overly big, but his catch radius is so big just because whenever, like you said, whenever he gets his hand on a ball, he usually brings it in.
It's ridiculous.
Shout out to Sarah for the $2 super chat. Really appreciate you, Sarah, as always. Thank you so much for joining the show. Sarah says, I'm pumped, and Pittman Jr. and Grover need need money. Would not be opposed to either of those guys getting extensions with the Colts to be some of the best on the team and some of the core members of this Indianapolis Colts group. Sarah, thank you so much for the super chat. As always, DSG Goodbar. Oh, Mom, I'm talking to my Colts friends, so that's a good one. Good one. But what we're going to talk about who DSG Goodbar wanted us to talk about here, Drake. Let's talk about Daryl Baker Jr., a cornerback who wasn't on really anybody's radars to start training camp. He has been kind of thrust into the starting lineup I should say, running with us the starting defense because of the injuries to Juju Brents, to Darius Rush throughout training camp. Daryl Baker Jr. has kind of taken one of those spots, and he's played well. Got an interception of Anthony Richardson today. He's been showing some being locked down on he's had winning reps against Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce. He's been a good surprise, and the more days he continues to stack, the better chance he ends up making this final roster.
Yeah, and the thing is, the guy's he's 6'1", 6'2", about 195 pounds. So he's a bigger, more physical type of corner that probably fits
exactly what Gus Bradley loves. Yep, exactly.
Loves everything about a guy that's built like Daryl Baker Jr. and the fact that he's been on the team. Last year, it was really hard to notice guys that weren't the starters just because it was such a crazy bad season. But the fact that he is making his way in camp and taking his opportunity and making the most of it is absolutely a joy to see. I know that we were kind of mentioning him like in the depth chart of the cornerback positional episode we did. I put him like right there basically in the immediate backups. And I'm very excited to see him doing this kind of work because, like I said, he's been with the team. He fits Bradley's scheme perfectly. And he's one of those guys you just love to hear about in camp that you didn't really talk about before. So if he can continue this, like you said, he's got a claim to potentially have some actual playing time in the NFL.
Exactly. And I think the Colts keep about 6 cornerbacks. Daryl Baker Jr. very well could sneak in and be one of those 6. Definitely not out of the question. And I want to bring another cornerback up too, because it's just very good to see and very encouraging for this defense. We talked about him, I think, last episode, but I'm going to talk about him again here because Gus Bradley keeps bringing him up. Kenny Moore II. And this is just so encouraging to see. Kenny Moore has been, again, lighting things up, just being a lockdown corner out there for the Colts. And it seems like him and Gus Bradley are on the same page. Gus Bradley told us that multiple offensive coaches have come up to Ron Miles, the defensive backs coach, and talked to them about Kenny Moore and how great he is playing and how many plays he's making in practices. So again, when you're stacking days like this, it's of good performances, it's no longer just an anomaly. It's creating that momentum for the season, and day after day after day, Kenny Moore is making the plays like Pro Bowl Kenny Moore did in 2021. Drake, that is music to the Colts' ears, especially for this young secondary.
And you just said it with the young secondary. That's the biggest reason, is because he's needed so much more than he previously thought. You know, after the whole Rodgers thing happened, more attention is on him than before. And like we've said before, we thought this was a thin cornerback room before all that went down. So the fact that this is all working out, Kenny Moore, like I said, may need to have a Pro Bowl season to show the NFL that he is a Pro Bowl player. Like, he can't just because it was a bad year, he can't have an okay season. No, he needs to shoot it out of the freaking park. And I think that right now he's looking fantastic. And we seem to be talking about him every day, which is what we were doing in the exact same training camp of the season where he just took off and had 4 interceptions in the NFL. So it just makes your heart warm as a Colts fan to see a guy who was really struggling with confidence last year, hitting his stride in Gus Bradley's scheme, a scheme that many thought he might not fit in due to his size and just due to the way that he worked in Eberflus's scheme. It just makes you very happy, especially if you're on the coaching staff for the Colts.
Stats Matt asks, if there any update of when Shaquille Leonard will be cleared for 11 on
Big
11
question.
in padded sessions? Not yet. There hasn't been an update. Shane Steichen said this is just all part of the plan. For those that don't know, Shaquille Leonard has been out there for pretty much everything, including 7 on 7, except for the full 11 on 11 padded sessions when they're in full pads. When they're not in full pads, Shaq Leonard is out there and he's popping people a little bit. But this is all part of the plan. Again, they're still trying to ease Shaq Leonard back into everything, but the fact that he's participating in pretty much everything else, and we're only week 2 of training camp, I think that's a good sign. So I would probably say maybe next week you might see him in there a little bit, or the week after, but it seems like this is all part of the progression, and before too long we should see number 53 out there in the full padded 11 on 11 sessions. But Drake, we're sticking with the cornerback room. They did get some good news. Darius Rush returned to practice today from his shoulder injury. He's been running mostly with the third string just because he hasn't practiced much. And I would assume that he would soon go from third string up to second string before then he starts to battle Dallas Flowers and Daryl Baker Jr. for force reps on that starting defense.
Boy, every time we've talked about Darius Rush, it's always been the Dallas Flowers. It's so good to hear. Now it's a triangle match here, man. It's Dallas Flowers versus Baker versus Darius Rush. And so the fact that Rush is returning is just adding to more competition in the cornerback room. The Colts need it. They've got a whole bunch of different kinds of cornerbacks now, but Rush is of the ball hawking variety. So I really am high on him. I'm happy to see him back. And as a Colts fan, you're just hoping that he can get to what makes him such a strong prospect and a steal, and that's taking the ball away. So the fact that he's returning and now he's got to compete with a guy that came out of nowhere like Baker Jr., that just adds to the fun of watching Colts training camp.
And while Darius Rush returned to practice, there are still some players that have returned. So I'm going to run through the injuries real quick. Obviously, we know about Zach Moss and his arm. He's probably going to be out till at least week 1 or week 2. Jelani Woods still dealing with a hamstring injury, as well as Samson Ebukam, and Juju Brents and Julian Blackman. All 4 of those guys dealing with hamstrings. But Shane Steichen did say that Blackman and Brents are going to be returning sooner rather than later. And then when Brents does, that'll actually be the first time that we're going to see Brents in live action in a Colts uniform. So excited to see that. Offensive line also dealing with a couple injuries. Jake Witt has a hip injury, and then Emil Akior has an undisclosed injury, but it's kept him out of practice. Definitely hurts him as far as not even starting at right guard, but making the team. I think Emil Akior really needs to get back out there. And then some others on the defensive side of the ball. EJ Speed missed practice with an ankle injury. Liam Anderson had his arm in a sling, a backup linebacker. And then probably the biggest one of all, Drake, DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner missed practice, or he started practice today, got his foot rolled up on and did not return to practice. So Shane Steichen said he's dealing with a little bit of a foot. That's about as much detail as we ever get from Shane Steichen about an injury, but hopefully it's not too serious. I mean, he was standing watching practice, so it's not like he left and didn't come back. But obviously the Colts defense is much, much stronger when number 99 is out there on the field.
Yeah, and I go on the side of they're probably just being very cautious. It probably was a little tweak, and they said, hey, you're one of our most important players. You just need a couple days or whatever, or the rest of practice. Just sit here, stand, watch, and we'll go ahead and wrap up and just make sure that you're good.
Yeah, so definitely going to keep an eye on that. The Colts are off tomorrow, Friday. I think it's just a walkthrough. They'll be back on the field on Saturday. So we'll see if DeForest Buckner is out there or if this is going to take a little bit longer for Defoe to heal up. And we'll just have to see. That gives guys like Adebaware some reps. Telvin Agim McTelvin, I think is his name. Some more reps there, defensive tackle. So it gives people a chance to compete while DeForest Buckner's out. But we want to see DeForest Buckner in the middle of that
yeah.
defensive line.
Bad.
But Drake, something that we haven't done yet throughout training camp, and as week 2 comes to a close here, we really haven't updated the position battles for the Colts here. There wasn't too many that we had highlighted before camp, but let's run through some of them and kind of talk about who we think is currently ahead right now. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball with that slot wide receiver. Who do you think is ahead right now? Isaiah McKenzie or Josh Downs?
In this moment, I still think it's going to be Isaiah McKenzie just because he's the veteran. But the way that Josh Downs has been playing, I'm starting to think it's fast-tracked in my opinion. I don't think it's going to be as far off as previously thought where he might supplant him.
I agree. Isaiah McKenzie has been getting most of the first team reps, but Josh Downs has been sprinkled in there. I think I'm still on track that Isaiah McKenzie will start to begin the season, and we'll see Josh Downs take over as the season goes along. Tight end group, it's been a lot of Mo Alley Cox in that blocking role. When Jelani Woods is out there, Jelani Woods is the starting tight end with the running with the ones. And then again, Kylan Granson. So it's those top 3 have again been the top 3 guys that we thought all along. Bill Mallory has made some plays as he's working his way back. Drew Ogletree as well. But nobody has really challenged Mo Alley Cox, Jelani Woods, and Kylan Granson yet.
Yeah, and Drew Ogletree's made some plays just kind of like he did in last year's training camp and whatnot and off season. But right now it's still sticking to those 3. You're just hoping Jelani Woods can continue to, not have any issues with his hamstring or ankle. And that's still a battle to watch, is that entire tight end group. It could be anybody at this point.
Right. So when the tight ends have been out there, Kylan Granson has made some plays. Jelani Woods has made some plays, even more like Cox, but it seems like those 3 are still locked in as the top 3 tight ends. Moving along to right guard. Now, right guard, really no competition. It's been Will Fries the entire time. We haven't seen anybody else taking any starting reps at right guard. So I would almost assume that right guard is pretty much wrapped up. I think it's Will Fries' job, and I don't think he's really in danger of losing that starting job. What do you think, Drake?
It's just apparent that the Colts felt that he just needed a little bit more experience because last season he showed glimpses, especially in the run game, of an absolute beast. He just really needed to shore up that footwork with his pass blocking, kind of got knocked off of his ankles a lot. But clearly the Colts see a bright future in Will Fries, and they think that he's going to be able to play that right guard position because, like you said, no one else has really competed against him.
I tell you what, that offensive line as a whole playing pretty well throughout training camp. They've been holding up a lot better than we saw last season. And I think Tony Sperano Jr. has a lot to do with that. So continue to watch the Colts offensive line. Obviously, we'll see what happens throughout these preseason games and once we get into the season. But I'm optimistic about this group and especially what Tony Sperano Jr. has been able to do with this group. Quentin Nelson absolutely loves Tony Sperano Jr. He has Quentin Nelson very fired up for this season. And when that's taking place, I'm all for it because Quentin Nelson normally doesn't get too fired up. So that's saying something. Now we move to the defensive side of the ball. Really, there hasn't been too many position battles. Cornerback's the big one, and there really hasn't been too much of a battle because Juju Brents has been hurt, Darius Rush has been hurt. So the starters have been Kenny Moore and Dallas Flowers when they are in their base. Then when they go to nickel, Kenny Moore obviously goes into his nickel spot in the slot, and that's when Darrell Baker Jr. comes in as the starting cornerback. Obviously, that will change when Juju Brents comes back. Juju Brents will be worked in. Then I'm expecting him to be in the starting lineup. But hey, it's good opportunities for Dallas Flowers and Darrell Baker Jr., and both of them have been making plays.
Yeah, and really the battle to watch. I mean, look, when Juju Brents is healthy, like you said, Andrew, he's probably going to be cemented into that cornerback 2 role, cornerback 1 on the outside, whatever you want to say. So that's kind of quote unquote reserved until he loses that opportunity. Right now, it's even more interesting than before with Baker Jr. versus Darius Rush versus Dallas Flowers. Cornerback 3 is going to be an absolute battle to see whoever gets that position at the end of training camp.
Exactly. And I love it. Competition brings out the best in everybody. So I'm really excited to see how that shakes out in the end. So let's wrap up the episode. We're going a little bit long here, but we'll just kind of talk about we'll talk about the latest signings and the latest departures from this Colts team. So we already talked about Toriano Clinton. We talked about Amari Rodgers, but the Colts also signed USFL standout tight end LaMichael Petway Petway, and then offensive tackle Dan Skipper, former Detroit Lion, a massive dude, 6'10", 325 pounds, immediately becomes the biggest Colt on the team. And to make room for all of these moves, the Colts waived wide receiver Johnny King, tight end Caden Smith, offensive tackle Jordan Murray, and defensive tackle Jamal Woods. So out of all the signings this week, Drake, which one stands out the most to you?
Definitely Dan Skipper, because I mean, Amari Rogers, I think, is interesting, but LaMichael Petway, I think, is just to continue to push the tight end room. I think that's quote unquote what you call a camp body. But Dan Skipper, with his experience, former starter for the Lions, he could actually do something with this offensive line, and he could be somewhere on this roster. Same thing for Amari Rogers. Colts love special teams. Well, that's what he's done most of his career.
Exactly. I think Rodgers and Skipper have the best chance to make the roster. Still think it's
Definitely.
going to be an uphill climb for both of them, but hey, go prove it in training camp. Go make that decision hard for the Colts coaches and general manager Chris Ballard. So we'll have to see. Likely just camp battles, but anything is possible here in the National Football League. And that's our show for this evening, guys. Really appreciate a marathon. Really appreciate everybody jumping on for tonight's episode. You guys are just excited about Colts football as we are. Want to give a shout out to all of our super chats. Sarah, my beautiful wife, Danielle, Josh, DSG Goodbar. Thank you all so much for all of the super chats. We really appreciate you guys' support and everybody else that joined us here tonight. And if you haven't done so already, please go follow us on all of our social media, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on Twitter, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and click that bell so you know whenever Drake and I are going live, whenever Shad's going live, because you don't want to miss a single episode or any Colts content. And if you can't catch us live, like I always say, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you're listening to podcasts, we're on there as well. And if you want to come and hang out with us after practice on Sunday, you're in the Indy area, come to Grand Junction. Come to the brewery there in Westfield, 5:30 p.m. We're going to be drinking some beers. We're going to be talking some Colts football. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, but as we wrap up here tonight, Drake, what can the people find on horseshoehuddle.com that you have written over the past few days?
Two things. What changes the Colts offense could see without Jonathan Taylor? Terrifying thought, but could happen theoretically. And then I did the breaking news piece where I broke down each one of those three running backs that they tried out. So go check it out if you're curious about them.
Awesome. Definitely go check those pieces out. I've got a few out there on horseshoehuddle.com myself. Jonathan Taylor versus the Indianapolis Colts. Who's to blame? I give my thoughts on the whole situation with JT and the Colts, and I tell you who I think is to blame for this big mess. Also have a piece out there on Anthony Richardson, what he said, how he is feeling, the differences between the college and the pro game, and where just he is in his development as the quarterback, possibly starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. And then today just came out, talked to Michael Pittman Jr. and what he is seeing, not only from Anthony Richardson, but just on his contract extension and the different approach he is taking than Jonathan Taylor, and what this combination of Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman could be for the Colts, not only this season, but down the line. So make sure to go check all of those out on horseshoehuddle.com. You can follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we will be back Monday night to talk more Colts football with you and talk about everything that we have seen live at Colts camp. So until then, go watch the Hall of Fame game, enjoy some preseason football, and we'll see you, if not Sunday evening in Westfield, we'll see you back here Monday night. Take care.